The Xenos hub station hovered in the vast emptiness of the neutral zone, a luminescent structure of interconnected biospheres and medical wings resembling a massive snowflake against the backdrop of distant nebulae. Inside its metal corridors, life from 1,000 worlds coexisted within carefully calibrated environments. Methane chambers for Krelian diplomats, plasma-filled sections for energy beings, and reinforced halls for species that towered over most sentient life forms. It was 0347 station time, that peculiar hour when most of the hub's inhabitants had retreated to their designated sleep cycles. The medical wing maintained its constant hum of activity, though at a subdued level, with only emergency personnel monitoring vital systems. Most patients slumbered peacefully in healing stasis pods or under the watchful eyes of medical drones, programmed to alert staff at the slightest anomaly. Dr. Erin Selene stood at the viewport of her private office, gazing at the distant stars. Sleep eluded her, as it often did. The lights of passing vessels reminded her of fireflies from her homeworld, Earth, a planet she hadn't visited in nearly a decade. Her reflection stared back, a woman in her mid-30s with sharp features, softened only by the compassion in her eyes. Her dark hair pulled back in a practical knot, and the faint lines around her mouth that spoke of both laughter and strain. The United Galaxy Coalition spread before her, a complex tapestry of species, alliances, and territories, dominated by the predator races who had naturally risen to power. In this cosmic hierarchy, those who could hunt effectively controlled galactic politics, trade routes, and territorial claims. Highest among them were the Thrakar, an imposing species whose hunting prowess had become the foundation of their entire civilization. Auron had treated members of nearly every known species in her career as a xenobiologist. But Thrakar patients were exceptionally rare. Their culture revolved around strength and honor to an extreme degree. Seeking medical assistance was considered weakness, and weakness was shameful. Better to die gloriously than to live with the dishonor of admitting vulnerability. It was a cultural principle, so deeply ingrained that most Thrakar would rather perish from treatable conditions than face the humiliation of requesting help. Her communicator vibrated against her wrist, startling her from her reverie. "Dr. Selene," she answered, instantly alert. "Priority 1 emergency, Doctor. High priority trauma bay. Immediate attendance required," came the crisp voice of the station's AI. "Species?" Erin was already moving, grabbing her medical kit. "Thrakar female. Critical condition. Multidimensional trauma detected." Auron froze momentarily. A Thrakar. In their trauma ward. The implications were staggering. "I'm on my way. Prep quantum stabilization and notify the bioregeneration team." The corridors of Xenos Hub seemed to stretch endlessly as Erin sprinted through them, her mind racing faster than her feet. A Thrakar warrior brought to their station, instead of to one of their own medical facilities, meant something extraordinary had occurred. The diplomatic ramifications alone could be severe if they intervened against Thrakar customs, or if they failed to save the patient. The emergency bay doors parted with a pneumatic hiss, revealing controlled chaos. Medical staff from various species moved with precision around a massive form on the central surgical platform. The Thrakar warrior was enormous, at least 3 meters tall, with a formidable exoskeleton of chitin plates covering a muscular form. Blood of an unusual golden-orange hue seeped from multiple fractures in the armor, igniting briefly when it contacted the metal platform, creating small flares that the staff hurriedly extinguished. What struck Erin immediately wasn't just the warrior's size or injuries, but her eyes, 4 secondary ocular lenses surrounding 2 primary ones, all reflecting a shifting matrix of colors that signified consciousness. Despite catastrophic injuries that would have rendered most species unconscious or dead, this Thrakar was fully aware and completely silent. Station Chief Karan, A Valdori physician whose species had evolved as prey to Thrakar hunters stood at the far edge of the platform, visibly uncomfortable. His translucent skin revealed accelerated neural patterns, a sign of extreme stress among his people. "Dr. Celine," he greeted tersely. "We have a situation." Arin moved closer, scanning the Thrakar's injuries with practiced efficiency. "Report." "Found drifting in an escape pod at the edge of the neutral zone. Multiple fractures to the exoskeleton. Internal hemorrhaging. Severe neural disruption consistent with exposure to nebula-engineered energy waves. By all medical standards, she should be dead." "And yet," Arin murmured, "she's not only alive but conscious." "Yes, and therein lies our problem." Corin lowered his voice. "You know Thrakar custom. They refuse medical intervention as a matter of honor. To die in battle is glorious. To accept help is disgrace." Nurse Krisa, a Zento whose transparent skin shifted from anxious purple to concerned blue, approached with a data pad. "We've attempted basic scans, but she's resisting all interventions, refuses sedation, rejects pain management, attacks any staff who attempt direct contact. We've already lost 2 medical drones to her acid projections." As if to emphasize the point, the Thrakar suddenly convulsed, sending a spray of corrosive saliva toward a nearby monitoring device. The liquid hissed as it melted through the equipment, sending sparks flying. "Have you contacted the Thrakar High Council?" Arin asked, already knowing the answer would complicate matters. Coran's skin pulsed with darker patterns, the Valdori equivalent of a grimace. "They've responded. They're demanding we allow the warrior to die with honor. Direct intervention would violate their cultural protocols and could potentially threaten our neutrality status." Arin stared at the injured warrior, whose multiple eyes had fixed on her with unsettling intensity. Despite the obvious agony, there was pride in that gaze, a refusal to surrender that transcended species barriers. "What's her name?" Arin asked quietly. "Unknown. She hasn't spoken a word since arrival." Arin stepped closer to the platform, carefully staying beyond the reach of the Thrakar's powerful limbs. "I'm Dr. Arin Celine," she said directly to the warrior. "You're at Xenos Hub, a neutral medical facility. Your injuries are severe but potentially treatable. Will you accept our assistance?" The Thrakar's primary eyes narrowed, secondary lenses rotating in what Arin recognized as the species' expression of derision. With a labored movement, she turned her massive head away, a clear rejection. "She's made her choice, Doctor," Corin said. "We must respect it." Arin frowned, studying the warrior's injuries more carefully. The biosynth scanner in her hand revealed the true extent of the damage. The nebula-engineered energy waves had disrupted cellular coherence at a quantum level, causing cascading neural collapse. Without intervention, death was certain within hours, a painful, prolonged death that served no purpose, glorious or otherwise. "When I became a doctor," Arin said carefully, "I swore to preserve life wherever possible. All life." "Your Earth Oath doesn't supersede interstellar diplomatic protocol," Corin countered. "If we force treatment on a Thrakar against their explicit cultural taboos, we risk the safety of this entire station. They could revoke our neutral status. And then where would the thousands of patients who depend on us seek treatment?" Arin understood the stakes. Xenos Hub existed as a haven precisely because it respected the customs and biology of all species. Their neutrality was their protection, allowing them to treat patients from warring factions without fear of reprisal. But at what point did respect for cultural practices cross the line into neglect of their fundamental mission? The Thrakar warrior suddenly convulsed, her massive form arching as internal injuries worsened. A splash of golden blood erupted from her mouth, igniting briefly in the air before station suppressants extinguished the flames. The monitoring equipment registered critical decline in multiple systems. "She's dying," Arin stated flatly. "With honor, as her culture demands," Corin replied, though his voice wavered. The medical team stood frozen in the impossible tension between their healing imperative and diplomatic necessity. Nurse Crease's skin had shifted to a deep, mournful indigo as she prepared the ceremonial coverings used when patients passed beyond medical help. The Thrakar's eyes remained fixed on the ceiling, refusing to acknowledge the help that stood just meters away. Pride, culture, tradition, all conspired to ensure her death would be meaningless, except as a testament to stubbornness. Arin had built her reputation on saving the unsavable, on finding solutions where others saw only inevitable loss. Nicknamed the last resort by colleagues, she had pioneered techniques for regenerating species whose biology defied conventional treatment. But this wasn't about technical capability. It was about consent. Begin monitoring her neural patterns, Arin instructed, suddenly. Full spectrum analysis. Doctor? Crease questioned, confused by the order. If she won't verbalize consent, perhaps we can establish it through neural response. It was a theoretical approach, one that pushed ethical boundaries. But Arin refused to stand idle, while a sentient being suffered unnecessarily. The Thrakar's secondary eyes rotated toward Arin, her mandibles clicking in what might have been disapproval or curiosity. The monitoring equipment, hastily recalibrated after the acid attack, began displaying complex patterns of neural activity. There's coherent thought beneath the pain, Arin observed, studying the readouts. She understands her situation. Koran moved closer, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his fear. The patterns suggest conflict. See these oscillations? Classic indicators of internal struggle. Arin nodded. She's fighting with herself, not just her injuries. The warrior's condition continued to deteriorate. Vital signs weakened, and the intervals between painful convulsions shortened. Each episode caused more damage to already compromised systems. Time was running out. I'm going to try something, Arin announced, retrieving a specialized neural interface from her kit. This won't provide treatment, only communication. If there's even a fraction of willingness beneath that cultural conditioning, I need to find it. Before Koran could object, Arin had calibrated the device and moved toward the Thrakar's head. The warrior's eyes tracked her approach, mandibles shifting in what might have been a warning. I'm not treating you, Arin assured her, holding the device where the Thrakar could see it. This just lets us understand each other better. You remain in control. For a tense moment, it seemed the warrior would reject even this minimal intervention. Then, almost imperceptibly, her massive head tilted slightly, the barest nod of acquiescence. Arin carefully positioned the neural interface near the base of the Thrakar's skull, where sensory processing centers were located in their species. The device activated with a soft hum, creating a semi-telepathic field that translated neural impulses into comprehensible thought patterns. The monitors flared with sudden activity as the connection established. Images and concepts, rather than words, flooded the screens. Battle scenes, a devastating ambush, overwhelming pain, and beneath it all, a profound sense of failure. Not just physical defeat, but ideological collapse. The warrior had been bested not just in combat, but in purpose. She was ambushed in the Kalar Nebula, Arin interpreted, reading the neural translations. Some kind of experimental weapon. She wasn't just injured. She was deliberately targeted for the weapons test. More images appeared. A ship unlike any in known registry. Weapons that distorted space itself. Fellow warriors falling to invisible forces that shredded their very molecules. The Thrakar had been the sole survivor, managing to reach an escape pod before consciousness faded. This wasn't a fair fight, Arin continued, her voice hardening. This was scientific experimentation on sentient beings. Someone's developing quantum disruption weapons and testing them on living subjects. The implications were staggering. Weapons that could disrupt biological coherence at a quantum level, violated numerous interstellar treaties. If deployed widely, they could destabilize entire ecosystems, perhaps even the fabric of spacetime itself. The Thrakar's eyes fixed on Aaron with new intensity, a silent communication passing between them. The neural interface translated, "They must be stopped. Others will die. Many others." She's not just refusing treatment because of honor, Aaron realized aloud. She believes her death is necessary, a warning to her people about this new threat. Corin frowned. Then we truly cannot intervene. This is beyond cultural custom. It's her chosen mission. The warrior's condition worsened visibly. Golden blood now seeped continuously from multiple fractures in her exoskeleton. Her breathing labored and irregular. The neural interface showed increasing chaos as quantum disruption spread through her nervous system. Aaron stood frozen in the terrible knowledge that respect for this warrior's choice meant watching her die when salvation was within reach. The neural interface continued to transmit images of Thrakar worlds, hunting grounds, hatcheries where young warriors trained in ancient combat forms, a civilization at risk from an unseen enemy, wielding impossible weapons. "There are other ways to warn your people," Aaron said directly to the Thrakar. "Ways that don't require your death." The neural feedback intensified. Weakness brings dishonor. Dishonor brings exclusion. The excluded are not heard. "But the dead are silent forever," Aaron countered. "How will you ensure your warning reaches those who need it?" A moment of hesitation registered in the neural patterns. Doubt. Uncertainty. The warrior had not considered this aspect, that her death might ensure the silence of her warning rather than amplify it. The monitoring equipment suddenly shrieked with alarms as multiple systems began cascading failure. The quantum disruption had reached critical mass, accelerating the cellular decoherence throughout the Thrakar's body. Convulsions racked her massive frame, sending medical equipment flying and staff scrambling for safety. "We're losing her," Krisa called out, her skin flashing urgent red patterns. "Neural collapse imminent," another staff member reported. "Cellular coherence falling below sustainable levels." Aaron watched in helpless frustration as the proud warrior's life ebbed away. A life that could be saved. Information that could save countless others, lost to cultural strictures and misplaced pride. The Thrakar's eyes began to dim, secondary lenses retracting as consciousness faded. The neural interface displayed increasingly fragmented patterns, thoughts dissolving into chaos. In moments, she would be beyond any intervention, medical or otherwise. And then, so quietly that Aaron almost missed it, the Thrakar's mandibles moved, producing a sound barely audible above the medical alarms. "Help!" A single word, whispered from the depths of agony and cultural transgression. The monitors registered the vocalization, the neural interface confirming its authenticity. It was no hallucination, no desperate interpretation of random sounds. The warrior had asked for help. The room froze in collective shock. A Thrakar, the apex predator of known space, whose cultural identity was built on never showing weakness, had requested assistance. It violated every understanding of their species, every diplomatic briefing ever given about Thrakar psychology. Aaron moved before conscious thought could form. Years of medical training taking over. "Full quarantine protocols! Seal this room!" she shouted, already reaching for the specialized equipment needed for quantum stabilization. "Dr. Celine," Corin protested, "the diplomatic—" She asked for help. Aaron cut him off, her voice leaving no room for debate. Explicit verbal consent overrides cultural protocol. Medical ethics are clear on this point. The staff hesitated only momentarily before springing into action. Emergency force fields established a sterile environment around the trauma bay. Advanced medical drones, specially shielded against Thrakar defensive mechanisms, moved into position. "Prepare neural reconstructive fluid. 7% concentration," Aaron ordered as she calibrated the quantum stabilization array. We need to halt the cellular decoherence before attempting regeneration. The Thrakar warrior lay still now, the momentary surrender having depleted her remaining strength. Her eyes had dimmed to a dull amber, but remained fixed on Aaron, with an expression that transcended species barriers, a desperate hope beneath millennia of cultural conditioning. Nurse Krisa, establish a microgravity field around her spinal column. Aaron continued, working with practiced efficiency. The quantum disruption is most severe there. If we can stabilize that region, the peripheral systems should follow. Staff members moved in coordinated patterns, each performing their role in the complex dance of emergency medicine. Biosynth injectors delivered precisely calibrated doses of stabilizing compounds. Regenerative matrices formed around damaged tissues, providing scaffolding for cellular reconstruction. Quantum coherence at 15% and falling, reported one of the technical specialists, a Narvian whose 6 arms operated multiple control systems simultaneously. Critical threshold approaching. Aaron adjusted the settings on the main stabilization array, pushing the equipment beyond its standard parameters. Increase power to the coherence field by 30%. Reroute emergency reserves if necessary. That exceeds safety protocols, Corin warned, though he had joined the effort despite his earlier objections. So does watching a patient die when we can save them, Aaron replied without looking up. Coherence status? Stabilizing at 17%. Still critical, but the decline has halted. A collective exhale of relief passed through the medical team. The first hurdle had been cleared. They had stopped the immediate quantum collapse. But the challenge had only begun. Reversing the damage would require techniques at the very edge of medical science. Procedures so experimental, they existed largely in theoretical papers rather than established protocols. Begin cellular regeneration sequence, Aaron instructed. Focus on neural pathways first. Then, work outward to supporting systems. The Thrakar warrior remained conscious throughout the procedure, her eyes tracking the movements of the medical team. Occasionally, her massive form would tense with pain or instinctive rejection of the treatment. But each time, she visibly forced herself to remain still, a silent cooperation that spoke volumes about the internal battle she fought against lifelong conditioning. Hours passed in intensive treatment. The medical team worked in shifts, each specialist contributing their expertise to the unprecedented case. Quantum stabilizers maintained cellular coherence, while regenerative compounds rebuilt damaged tissues. Neural reconstructors rewove the complex pathways of the Thrakar nervous system, preserving the memories and identity that had nearly been erased by the experimental weapon. Finally, as the station's chronometers indicated the passing of a full-day cycle, Aaron stepped back from the surgical platform, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. Quantum coherence stabilized at 78%, she announced. Neural pathways restored to functional parameters. She'll need extensive rehabilitation, but the immediate crisis has passed. The relief in the room was palpable. Medical staff exchanged congratulatory glances. The successful treatment of a patient on the verge of quantum dissolution representing a significant advancement in their collective knowledge. Only Corin remained concerned, his translucent skin showing the neural patterns of continued anxiety. The Thrakar High Council has sent 3 more communications, he informed Aaron quietly. Each more forceful than the last. They're demanding an explanation for our interference in sacred passage. Aaron straightened her shoulders, fatigue temporarily forgotten. Tell them the truth. Their warrior requested help, and we provided it in accordance with her expressed wishes. They won't accept that, Corin warned. No Thrakar has ever broken the honor code this way. They'll claim coercion or manipulation. Then they can speak to her directly, once she's recovered enough for communication. Aaron replied firmly. I won't apologize for saving a life at the patient's own request. The Thrakar warrior had been moved to a specialized recovery chamber, her massive form suspended in a regenerative field that continued the healing process. Monitoring systems tracked her vital signs, all showing gradual improvement. Her eyes remained closed now, the first true rest she had allowed herself since arriving at the station. "What's her name?" Aaron asked suddenly, realizing they had saved a life without knowing this most basic information. Coran consulted the scant records from the escape pod. Identification markers suggest she is called Valtris, a high-ranking hunter, judging by the ceremonial markings on her armor fragments. Valtris, Aaron repeated softly. A name now written into medical history as the first Thrakar to choose life over cultural mandates, to whisper help when every instinct and training demanded silent death. The next 3 days passed in a blur of medical procedures, diplomatic crises, and ethical debates. The Thrakar High Council escalated their protests, threatening to revoke Xenos Hub's neutral status and deploy hunter ships to retrieve their dishonored warrior. Station security was placed on high alert, though most staff believed the threats were primarily posturing. The Thrakar needed the neutral medical facility as much as any other species. Aaron spent most of her time in the recovery chamber, monitoring Valtris's progress and making minute adjustments to the treatment protocols. The warrior remained largely silent, but her consciousness had fully returned. Her multiple eyes following Aaron's movements with unreadable expressions. On the 4th day, as Aaron was reviewing neural regeneration data, a sound drew her attention. Valtris had shifted position, moving to a more upright posture, despite the regenerative field's resistance. "You should remain still," Aaron advised. "The cellular reconstruction is still in a delicate phase." The Thrakar's mandibles clicked softly before she spoke, her voice a deep, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate the very air. "Why save one who broke sacred law?" It was the first full sentence she had spoken, and Aaron noted with professional satisfaction that the neural reconstruction had preserved speech capabilities perfectly. "You asked for help," Aaron replied simply. "That request supersedes any cultural considerations in medical ethics. One word changes nothing of who I am," Valtris stated, secondary eyes rotating in complex patterns. "A hunter, a Thrakar. It changes everything about whether you live or die," Aaron countered. "That seems significant." The warrior was silent for a long moment, internal conflict visible in the tension of her massive form. Finally, she spoke again, each word carefully chosen. "The High Council will declare me voided, without honor, without place." "Perhaps," Aaron acknowledged, "or perhaps your survival will challenge assumptions about what honor truly means." "You do not understand our ways," Valtris said. But without the hostility, such a statement would normally carry. It was observation, rather than accusation. "I understand that you were attacked with illegal weapons, that you survived when others didn't, and that you carry information that could prevent further attacks," Aaron replied. "Those seem like honorable reasons to survive." Valtris's primary eyes narrowed, secondary lenses adjusting to focus more intently on Aaron's face. "You seek to redefine honor to suit your purpose." "I seek to treat my patient and prevent needless death," Aaron corrected gently. "If that requires examining cultural assumptions, so be it." Another silence fell, this one contemplative rather than tense. The monitoring systems showed Valtris's neural activity increasing, thoughts racing through pathways that had nearly dissolved into quantum chaos days earlier. "The weapon," she finally said. "It unmakes reality at its foundation. Those who wield it must be stopped." Aaron nodded, relieved that the warrior recognized the larger implications of what had happened. "We've forwarded preliminary analysis of your injuries to the Interstellar Security Council. The quantum disruption signature is unlike anything previously documented. Words and data will not stop hunters with new prey techniques," Valtris stated flatly. "Action is required." "First, you need to heal," Aaron reminded her. "Your cellular coherence is still below optimal levels. Attempting any strenuous activity could trigger cascading decoherence." The Thrakar made a sound that might have been frustration or acknowledgement. How long until function returns? At current regeneration rates, another 2 weeks for basic mobility. Full recovery of combat capabilities. Aaron hesitated. That's uncertain. The damage was extensive, and some neural pathways may never fully reconstruct. Valtris absorbed this information with the stoicism characteristic of her species. Then, I am truly voided. A hunter who cannot hunt has no place among the Thrakar. There are many ways to hunt, Aaron suggested. Intelligence gathering, strategy, training others. All require standing among the worthy, Valtris countered, which I have sacrificed with one word. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Station Chief Karan, his translucent skin showing the neural patterns of extreme agitation. He approached, cautiously, maintaining a respectful distance from the recovering Thrakar. Dr. Celine, he began formally. The Thrakar diplomatic vessel, Fang of Ancestral Glory, has docked at the station. Representatives of the High Council demand an immediate audience regarding their warrior. Valtris's entire body tensed, chitin plates shifting into a more defensive configuration despite her weakened state. They come to execute judgment, she stated with certainty. No one is executing anything on my medical station, Aaron replied firmly. You're my patient, under medical protection protocols. Doctor, Corin interjected nervously. The diplomatic implications can wait until my patient is fully stabilized. Aaron finished for him. Medical ethics are clear. Patient welfare comes first. Inform the Thrakar representatives that Valtris is still in critical care and cannot be disturbed without risking quantum relapse. They anticipated this response, Corin said unhappily. They're demanding to at least observe her condition directly, to verify our claims. Aaron glanced at Valtris, silently asking permission. After a moment's consideration, the warrior gave a slight nod. 2 observers, maximum, Aaron stipulated. No weapons, no communication devices, and they remain behind the containment field at all times. These are non-negotiable medical precautions. Corin's skin showed relief patterns at not being asked to deliver a complete refusal. I'll convey your terms immediately. After he departed, Valtris shifted her massive head to face Aaron directly. You position yourself between predator and prey, she observed. A dangerous stance. I'm a doctor, Aaron replied simply. My only position is beside my patient. Something like respect flickered in the Thrakar's multiple eyes. The High Council will not accept my choice. They will demand my return for proper termination. Then they'll be disappointed, Aaron stated with quiet determination. You asked for help. I provided it. That creates a bond of medical ethics that supersedes their cultural demands. Bond, Valtris repeated, the word seeming to hold special significance to her. Her secondary eyes rotated in complex patterns before she spoke again. Among Thrakar, a life preserved when death was certain creates the debt of honor, an unbreakable connection between savior and saved. Aaron frowned slightly. I don't expect any debt. Healing is its own reward in my profession. It is not your expectation that matters, Valtris replied. It is the law of my being. I have accepted help when our code demanded death. The balance must be restored through service to the one who preserved me. Before Aaron could respond to this unexpected development, the recovery room's entrance slid open to admit 2 towering Thrakar representatives. Even larger than Valtris, they wore ceremonial armor adorned with trophies from successful hunts. Bones, scales, and other remains of prey species displayed as warnings and status symbols. Their presence filled the room with palpable tension. Medical staff shrank back instinctively, evolutionary fear responses triggered by the apex predator's proximity. Only Aaron remained outwardly calm, positioning herself protectively between the visitors and her patient. I am Dr. Aaron Celine, Chief Medical Officer for Xenobiological Trauma. She introduced herself formally. You are permitted to observe patient Valtras's condition from behind the containment field. As agreed. The larger of the two Thrakar stepped forward, multiple eyes, focusing on Aaron with intimidating intensity. I am Hunt Lord Cravox, representative of the High Council. We do not recognize your patient designation. This is Warrior Valtras, who has violated sacred code by rejecting honorable passage. This is a medical facility, not a religious institution, Aaron replied evenly. Here, she is a patient under my care, and will be addressed as such. Cravox's mandibles clicked, in what might have been amusement or derision. Your courage is noted, human. It would serve you better in recognizing when you face forces beyond your comprehension. The second Thrakar moved closer to the containment field, studying Valtras with rotating secondary eyes. The Council has reviewed your escape pod telemetry. Warrior. The attack pattern matches 3 previous ambushes in the outer territories. All others perished honorably. Valtras's voice carried the weight of formal address. Honor-bearer Trelak. I preserved mission data on the weapons used against our hunting party. Data that would have been lost had I chosen passage. Data can be recovered from debris. Cravox dismissed. Honor, once surrendered, cannot. With respect, Hunt Lord, Aaron interjected. The quantum disruption weapons used against Valtras's team destabilize information at the subatomic level. No data would have survived her death. By choosing to live, she preserved crucial intelligence about a threat to all Thrakar. Both visitors turned their intimidating gaze on Aaron, mandibles clicking in synchronized patterns that suggested private communication. Finally, Cravox spoke again. You claim expertise in matters of Thrakar honor, human physician. I claim expertise in matters of life and death, Aaron corrected, and in recognizing when cultural practices must adapt to new threats. These weapons don't just kill, they unmake. They erase. Your traditional responses may need reconsideration when facing such technologies. A tense silence followed, broken only by the soft hum of medical equipment, maintaining Valtras's regenerative field. The political, cultural, and ethical dimensions of the situation created an almost tangible weight in the air. Finally, Honor-bearer Trelak addressed Valtras directly. The weapon. Describe it. Valtras's voice strengthened as she shifted to formal report mode. No visible emission. No energy signature detectable by standard sensors. The effect begins at neural junctions, spreading outward through cellular structures. It does not destroy. It decouples. Quantum coherence fails progressively, causing systems to lose pattern integrity. You felt this process? Cravox asked, a note of something almost like concern entering his tone. Every moment, Valtras confirmed. Consciousness remains while the body dissolves into probability states. It is not a passage of glory. The two council representatives exchanged glances, their multiple eyes rotating in synchronized patterns. Something in Valtras's description had clearly disturbed them beyond the mere fact of her survival. Such weapons violate the hunt code, Trelak stated finally. Prey must have the possibility of resistance. These devices offer none. Aaron sensed a potential opening. Then, Valtras's choice to survive serves your hunt code by bringing warning of dishonorable weapons. Cravox's massive head swiveled toward her. You are adept at reframing, human. But tradition cannot be so easily bent. Valtras asked for help. The words are spoken and cannot be unspoken. Words change nothing of what I am. Valtras interjected suddenly. I remain Thrakar. I remain Hunter. But I now carry the debt of honor to this human physician. By our most ancient laws, this debt supersedes even council judgment. Both visitors went completely still, secondary eyes retracting in what Aaron recognized as extreme surprise. The mention of this debt of honor clearly held significant cultural weight. You claim final bond? Cravox demanded, his tone suggesting disbelief. I do, Valtris confirmed without hesitation. My life was forfeit. It was preserved through another's action, with my conscious acceptance. The conditions are met. The debt is established. Trelak stepped closer to the containment field, studying Valtris intensely. This has not occurred in 7 generations. The implications are extensive. Explain, Aaron requested, feeling increasingly like a participant in a cultural ceremony whose rules she didn't understand. Kravox turned to her, mandibles set in a formal position. The debt of honor is our most ancient tradition, predating even the Hunt Code. When a Thrackar's certain death is prevented through another's intervention, with the Thrackar's acceptance, an unbreakable bond forms. The saved becomes honor-bound to the Savior until the debt is repaid. I don't require any service, Aaron clarified quickly. My treatment was freely given. Again, your requirement is irrelevant, Valtris stated. The debt exists independent of your acceptance. It is the balance that must be restored. Trelak's voice took on a formal cadence. If Valtris claims final bond under the debt of honor, the Council cannot interfere. She is bound to you, physician, until the debt is satisfied. Her actions become extensions of your will. The implications slowly dawned on Aaron. Valtris wasn't just invoking some minor cultural custom. She was using an ancient tradition to place herself beyond the Council's judgment by creating a bond they were culturally obligated to respect. And how is such a debt repaid? Aaron asked carefully. Through service of equal value to the life preserved, Kravox answered. Traditionally, this means the preservation of the Savior's life in turn. The bond remains until such equivalence is achieved. Aaron looked at Valtris, seeing the strategy behind the warrior's invocation. By claiming this ancient tradition, she had transformed her cultural transgression into a sacred obligation. The Council could not punish her without violating an even more fundamental aspect of Thrakkar culture. Then, it seems we have a resolution, Aaron observed. Valtris will complete her recovery here at Xenos Hub. When medically cleared, she will share her intelligence about the quantum disruption weapons with appropriate authorities. And this bond will be respected according to your traditions. The Council representatives exchanged another series of mandible clicks before Kravox spoke. We will report this development to the High Council. The final bond has not been invoked in centuries, but its precedence is absolute. Valtris's status is complicated, but no longer subject to simple judgment. The weapons data takes priority, Trelak added. We will dispatch research vessels to the ambush coordinates immediately. They departed with formal Thrakkar salutes to Valtris, a recognition of status that Aaron noted with interest. As soon as they were gone, Valtris relaxed visibly, her massive form settling back into the regenerative field. You used an ancient custom to outmaneuver your own leadership, Aaron observed, impressed despite herself. I adapted to changing conditions, Valtris corrected, as any successful hunter must. And this debt of honor? Is it truly as binding as you suggested? Valtris's primary eyes fixed on Aaron with unsettling intensity. It is the foundation of all Thrakkar interaction. Before we hunted other species, we hunted alongside them. The debt ensured cooperation when survival required it. So you've essentially appointed yourself my, bodyguard, assistant? Bondservant, Valtris supplied. Though the term lacks proper nuance in your language, I am bound to preserve your existence as you preserved mine, to act as extension of your will when needed, to ensure your continued function until balance is restored. Aaron shook her head, still processing the unexpected development. I'm not sure Xenos Hub's personnel regulations cover having a Thrakkar warrior as a bondservant. Regulations adapt or become irrelevant, Valtris stated with simple certainty. As do traditions, as do species. Adaptation is survival. The wisdom in the statement struck Aaron forcefully. For all their reputation as relentless predators, The Thrakar clearly possessed a pragmatic philosophy that had ensured their species' dominance. Valtris had demonstrated this adaptability by choosing life over dogmatic adherence to tradition when circumstances demanded it. "Rest now," Aaron advised, adjusting the regenerative field settings. "Your cellular coherence is improving, but still fragile. We can discuss the practical implications of this bond when you're stronger." Valtris settled back, her multiple eyes beginning to close in the Thrakar version of sleep. Just before consciousness faded, she spoke once more, her voice softer than before. "You risked much to preserve one who has hunted your kind. Why?" Aaron considered the question carefully. "Because life has value beyond cultural categories of predator and prey. Because knowledge shouldn't be lost when it could save others. And because when someone asks for help, giving it is the most fundamental honor I know." The Thrakar made a sound that might have been acknowledgement or perhaps something more complex. Then her eyes closed completely as healing sleep claimed her. The days that followed brought gradual healing and unprecedented changes to Xenos Hub. News of a Thrakar warrior bonded to a human physician spread throughout the station and beyond, creating ripples in diplomatic and cultural spheres. Species that had evolved as prey to Thrakar hunters viewed the development with cautious hope. If the most feared predators could break with tradition in favor of cooperation, perhaps other changes were possible. Valtris's recovery progressed faster than Aaron had dared hope. The warrior's inherent regenerative capabilities, enhanced by advanced medical techniques, restored cellular coherence to near-normal levels within 2 weeks. Physical therapy began. Valtris's massive form moving through carefully designed exercises to rebuild strength without triggering quantum relapse. Throughout the recovery process, the Thrakar maintained a stoic demeanor, enduring pain without complaint and following medical directives with precision. But there were moments when her cultural conditioning surfaced, reflexive aggression towards certain species, instinctive resistance to appearing vulnerable, frustrated impatience with physical limitations. Aaron worked closely with her, developing a relationship unlike any in her medical experience. The bond of honor created an unusual dynamic. Valtris was simultaneously patient, protector, and cultural enigma. They spent hours discussing the quantum disruption weapons, comparing medical data with Valtris's first-hand experience to build a comprehensive understanding of this new threat. "The disintegration follows neural pathways first," Valtris explained during one such session, tracing massive claws over a holographic display of her own neural structure. "Consciousness remains while control diminishes, a weapon designed to maximize terror before death," suggesting psychological warfare as much as physical elimination, Aaron noted, recording the observation. "Not typical of hunter species who generally prefer clean, efficient kills." "Not hunters," Valtris agreed, secondary eyes rotating thoughtfully. "Something else. Something that feeds on fear rather than flesh." The intelligence Valtris provided proved invaluable. Interstellar security forces located the ambush site, finding traces of the quantum disruption technology that confirmed her account. Investigation revealed a previously unknown group developing weapons that violated fundamental treaties, weapons that could potentially destabilize reality itself if deployed on a larger scale. 3 weeks after her arrival at Xenos Hub, Valtris was deemed medically stable enough for limited movement outside the regenerative field. She stood for the first time since her injuries, towering over the medical staff, her restored chitin armor gleaming under the medical bay lights. "How does it feel?" Aaron asked, monitoring quantum coherence readings on her medical scanner. Functional," Valtris replied pragmatically. "Reduced efficiency in tertiary muscle groups. Neural response delayed by approximately 12%. Acceptable for non-combat movement." It was a clinical self-assessment, but Aaron had learned to recognize the subtle indicators of emotion in Thrakar physiology. The slight extension of secondary visual organs, the minimal relaxation of mandible tension. Valtris was pleased with her progress, perhaps even proud. The cellular regeneration will continue for several more months, Aaron explained, updating the medical record. Your neural pathways show remarkable adaptability, creating alternative connections to bypass damaged sections. Adaptation ensures survival, Valtris stated, a phrase Aaron had come to recognize as something like a personal mantra for the warrior. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Station Chief Karan, accompanied by 2 security officers. His translucent skin showed complex neural patterns, indicating stress and formal purpose. Dr. Celine, he began stiffly. The Station Advisory Council requests your immediate presence regarding the continued accommodation of your Thrakar patient. Valtris immediately shifted position, interposing her massive form between Aaron and the newcomers in a protective stance. The bond of honor places me under Dr. Celine's authority, not your counsel's. Corin's skin pulsed with patterns of diplomatic caution. The council recognizes the cultural significance of your arrangement. However, practical matters of station security and interspecies relations must be addressed. Aaron placed a calming hand on Valtris's armor, a gesture that would have been unthinkable weeks earlier. It's all right. This discussion was inevitable. We should hear their concerns. The meeting took place in the station's primary conference chamber, a neutral space designed to accommodate representatives of dozens of species. The Advisory Council, comprised of diplomats and administrators from major spacefaring civilizations, regarded Valtris with expressions ranging from fear to curiosity to outright hostility. "Let us speak plainly," began Councillor Genva, a meridian whose crystalline form sparkled under the chamber lights. The presence of a Thrakar warrior on this station creates fundamental security concerns. Many species here evolved as prey to Thrakar hunters. Their psychological well-being is affected merely by proximity to a predator. "I hunt by choice, not compulsion," Valtris countered. "The bond of honor supersedes hunting rights." "An individual commitment does not erase evolutionary history," argued another counselor, a Phaelon whose gaseous form undulated with emotion. "The stress levels among certain patient populations have increased measurably since your arrival became common knowledge." Aaron stepped forward. "Valtris has provided crucial intelligence about quantum disruption weapons that threaten all species. Her continued presence allows ongoing monitoring of her unique injuries, advancing our understanding of treatments for similar attacks in the future. These benefits must be weighed against discomfort." "There is also the diplomatic dimension," Corin added reluctantly. "The Thrakar High Council has formally acknowledged the bond of honor, but continues to express dissatisfaction with the situation. They view Xenos Hub with increased suspicion." The debate continued for hours, circling through practical concerns, ethical considerations, diplomatic implications, and precedent-setting potential. Throughout, Valtris remained imposingly still, speaking only when directly addressed, but her presence dominated the chamber nonetheless. Finally, as discussions reached an impasse, Valtris spoke with unexpected insight. "You fear change," she observed, addressing the entire council. "As do the Thrakar, as do all species when patterns shift. But adaptation ensures survival. Perhaps my presence serves a purpose beyond medical recovery or intelligence gathering. Perhaps it begins adaptation." The council fell silent, considering her words. For many, it was the first time they had heard a Thrakar express something approaching philosophical reflection, rather than predatory pragmatism. "What adaptation do you envision?" asked Councillor Genva curiously. "One where predator and prey recognize common threats," Valtris replied. "Where strength serves protection rather than dominance. Where asking for help does not diminish honor, but expands possibility." Aaron looked at her patient with newfound appreciation. The warrior had articulated a vision that transcended individual circumstance, a potential evolutionary leap in interspecies relations. "I propose a compromise," Aaron suggested, into the thoughtful silence. "Valtris remains at Xenos Hub as my colleague. Her medical case continues to provide valuable data. Her intelligence on quantum disruption weapons remains accessible to security forces, and her presence becomes a controlled experiment in adaptive interspecies interaction. An experiment with significant variables," Corin noted skeptically. "All evolution is experimental," Valtris countered. "The alternatives are stagnation or extinction." After further deliberation, the Council approved a provisional arrangement. Valtris would be granted restricted resident status at Xenos Hub, with specific protocols for movement through public areas and interaction with vulnerable species. In return, she would continue sharing intelligence about the quantum weapons and participate in controlled cultural exchange programs designed to reduce interspecies tensions. As they left the council chamber, Aaron noticed a subtle change in how station personnel regarded Valtris. Fear remained. Certainly, evolutionary responses didn't disappear overnight, but curiosity had begun to replace automatic terror. The warrior's story had spread throughout the station. The predator who chose words over silence, adaptation over tradition, life over glorious death. "They still fear me," Valtris observed as they walked through corridors where other beings pressed themselves against walls to maintain distance. "Fear can transform," Aaron replied, "into respect, into understanding, eventually perhaps into acceptance. Transformation requires catalyst," the Thracker noted. "Perhaps that is the true purpose of the bond. Not service alone, but change." They reached the medical bay, now modified to accommodate Valtris's continued presence. The warrior moved to the viewport, gazing out at the stars with multiple eyes that reflected distant light. "The Thrakar believed honor existed only in strength that stood alone," she said quietly. "Yet our oldest traditions speak of bonds that connected hunter to hunter, predator to prey when survival demanded it. We forgot those stories in our rise to dominance." Aaron joined her at the viewport. "Sometimes ancient wisdom becomes relevant again when circumstances change. The weapons that nearly unmade me, they threaten all coherent life, predator and prey alike." Valtris continued. "Those who wield them see all other species as merely targets, variables in their experiments." "Then perhaps the adaptation you spoke of is already beginning," Aaron suggested. "Common threats creating common cause across traditional boundaries." Valtris turned her massive head, focusing all eyes on Aaron with unusual intensity. "You saved me when your instincts surely warned against it, when your colleagues advised against it, when my own culture demanded you not interfere. Why?" It was a repetition of the question she had asked weeks earlier, but now, with greater significance. Aaron considered her answer carefully. "Because boundaries between species are more permeable than we pretend. Because compassion isn't exclusive to prey species, nor is strength exclusive to predators. Because adaptation, as you've said, ensures survival. And sometimes, adaptation requires crossing lines we thought immutable." The Thrakar made a sound that Aaron had come to recognize as thoughtful acknowledgement. "Then the bond serves purpose greater than tradition. It becomes evolution itself. Days turn to weeks, and weeks to months. Valtris's recovery progressed beyond all medical expectations, though certain neural pathways remained permanently altered. The changes manifested not as disabilities, but as adaptations. Different ways of processing sensory information, altered movement patterns that compensated for quantum-disrupted tissues, new neural connections that created unexpected capabilities. The bond of honor evolved as well. What began as a cultural obligation transformed gradually into something more complex, a partnership that transcended traditional categories. Valtris accompanied Aaron on medical rounds, offering insights into predator species physiology that enhanced treatment protocols. In turn, Aaron helped the warrior navigate the unfamiliar territory of diplomatic interaction and cultural exchange. Throughout the station, the sight of a human physician working alongside a Thrakar warrior became, if not commonplace, at least no longer shocking. Other species began to approach Valtris with questions rather than fear, curiosity gradually overcoming instinctive aversion. 6 months after her arrival at Xenos Hub, Valtris stood again at the viewport of what had become their shared medical office. Her restored form cast an imposing shadow, chitin armor gleaming with the subtle iridescence of complete regeneration. The Interstellar Security Council reports the quantum disruption technology has been contained, she informed Aaron. The developers neutralized, their research secured for regulated study. Good news, Aaron replied, completing notes on a patient file. Though I suspect similar technologies will emerge elsewhere. Weaponized physics seems to be an unfortunate constant across civilizations. As is the drive to counter such weapons, Valtris observed. Our treatment protocols have been distributed to 17 major medical facilities. Quantum disruption is no longer a certain death sentence. The hour did not escape Aaron's notice. Somewhere in the months of collaboration, ownership of their medical advances had become shared, predator and prey creating knowledge together that benefited all species. A communication alert chimed softly. The station's AI announced, incoming transmission from Thrakar High Council, diplomatic priority. Valtris's secondary eyes rotated in what Aaron now recognized as mild surprise. Accept, she commanded. The holographic projection materialized between them. Hunt Lord Cravox. His imposing form diminished somewhat by the transmission medium, but still commanding respect. Warrior Valtris, he began formally. The High Council has reviewed the intelligence regarding quantum disruption weapons, as well as the medical protocols developed for treating affected warriors. Your contributions have been significant. Valtris maintained formal posture, mandibles set in respectful configuration. The bond of honor directed my actions. Hunt Lord, the knowledge serves all who face such weapons. Cravox's secondary eyes performed a complex rotation that indicated internal conflict. The Council has debated extensively the implications of your unique situation. Traditional wisdom offers no clear precedent. Your violation of the honor code by requesting assistance cannot be dismissed. Are intense, concerned that months of progress might be undermined by rigid adherence to cultural dogma. However, Cravox continued, the ancient texts speak of adaptation as the hunter's highest virtue, the ability to change when circumstances demand it, to recognize new hunting grounds, new techniques, new understandings of prey and predator alike. Valtris remained silent, awaiting the Council's judgment. The bond of honor you claim with the human physician is acknowledged as valid and binding, Cravox declared formally. Moreover, the Council recognizes that your actions, while unprecedented, have served the greater survival of our species against a threat that recognizes no distinction between predator and prey. The implications of this statement were enormous. The Thrakar High Council was not merely tolerating Valtris's cultural transgression, but finding value in it, perhaps even precedent for future adaptation. Your status among the Thrakar remains complex, Cravox concluded. Neither honored nor dishonored, but something our traditions have not yet named. The Council will observe with interest how the bond of honor manifests in this unprecedented form. The transmission ended, leaving Valtris and Aaron in contemplative silence. Finally, the warrior spoke. They adapt, she observed simply, as must we all. What does this mean for your standing among your people? Aaron asked. It means transformation continues, Valtris replied. Not restoration of what was, but creation of what must be. The Thrakar have dominated through strength and honor, defined by ancient parameters. Perhaps those parameters expand now to include new understandings. Outside the viewport, A Thrakar diplomatic vessel moved gracefully past Xenos hub, its predatory lines gleaming in starlight. Beyond it, ships of a dozen species navigated the complex dance of interstellar commerce and diplomacy. Former predators and prey, finding ways to coexist in the vast expanse of space. You whispered help and everything changed, Aaron mused, watching the vessels. One word against millennia of tradition. Words have power when spoken at critical junctures, Valtris agreed. As do actions when taken despite fear. As do bonds when formed across boundaries, thought impermeable. The station's day cycle began its transition to night, ambient lighting softening to accommodate the circadian rhythms of various species. Staff changed shifts. Patients settled into healing sleep, and the eternal business of medicine continued in its cycles of crisis and resolution. The bond of honor traditionally ends when the debt is repaid, Aaron noted. When the saved preserves the savior in turn. Yet you've protected me from multiple threats these past months. By your culture's measure, the debt might already be balanced. Valtris's primary eyes fixed on Aaron with an expression that transcended species barriers. Something that might, in a human, have been called affection. Some bonds transcend traditional measures, the warrior observed. Some adaptations create patterns not easily unraveled. Some debts, once acknowledged, transform into connections that serve purposes beyond their origin. What purpose do you see in our continued connection? Aaron asked. Evolution, Valtris replied simply. Not merely of individuals, but of understanding. The predator who learns to see beyond the hunt. The healer who recognizes strength in vulnerability. The station where such transformation becomes possible. The civilizations that might follow such examples. They stood together at the viewport, silhouetted against the stars. The human physician who had risked everything to save a predator's life. And the Thrakar warrior who had whispered one word that challenged millennia of cultural certainty. Between them, something new had formed. Not simply a bond of obligation, but a partnership that suggested possibilities beyond traditional categories of predator and prey, strength and weakness, honor and shame. One word changed everything, Aaron acknowledged softly. And many words, many actions will continue that change, Valtris added. As all life must adapt or face extinction. Beyond the viewport, the universe continued its endless expansion. Galaxies spiraling through the void, civilizations rising and falling, species evolving through countless adaptations. Within that cosmic dance, on a medical station hovering in neutral space, a small but significant adaptation had begun, a whispered help opening doorways that millennia of silence had kept firmly closed. The predator had been dying in silence, until she whispered one word that changed everything. And in that change, perhaps, lay the seeds of a new understanding between all who shared the vast, unfolding cosmos.